Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Carolina Lopez. I am a medical doctor, and today we're going to talk about an important question, or at least my perspective, about how can civilizations' diseases be defeated. If you were here yesterday, I'm sorry, but I'm going to repeat the same introduction because I think it's really important to know who am I and why I'm talking about this topic. So I come from a small country in the middle of Central America called Costa Rica. Probably some of you have heard about it because it is a beautiful country with a lot of nature and beautiful beaches, and probably some of you have never heard about it. But more than its nature, Costa Rica is famous because it's one of the 5 blue zones in the world. Blue zones are places in the world where people tend to live a longer and healthier life. It is said that in these blue zones, people tend to live more than 100 years, and there are only 5 in the world. The first one discovered was Sardinia in Italy, and eventually in 2004, a journalist called Dan Butner discovered there were 4 other blue zones. Loma Linda in California, Okinawa in Japan, Ikaria in Greece, and Nicoya in Costa Rica. That is where I come from and where I've been working. So this is the place where I work. It is a beautiful coastal town in Nicoya. It is a retreat center called Blue Spirit. It is called Blue Spirit because we want to teach people and we want to practice a type of medicine that captures that essence of the blue zone and how people in the blue zones live. I think most of us have visited hospitals or clinics, and we have noticed that the modern medical model is based on symptoms and disease. We come to a clinic because something hurts or when we feel bad, and doctors give us pills. We don't worry about our health until we're sick. And what I want to talk to you about today is I want to talk about preventative medicine. Thinking about our health before we get sick, and thinking about our health as something we do every day and not something we worry about when we're older or when we're sick. And for this, I want to introduce the concept of health span. Because when I say I work at the longevity clinic, it doesn't mean we're just interested in helping you live a longer life, but we're interested in helping you live a healthier life for a longer period of time. And healthier life doesn't mean only we want you to live till 120 but be in a bed sick for the last 20 years of your life. No, we want you to feel good for as long as you can. And not only good in your body, but also good in your brain, meaning to have good memory, to think the right way, spiritually, meaning that when you're 90, 100, you still feel you have purpose. You still feel you have people around you that support you and love you. And of course, the body. We want to feel good in the body. We want to feel that we're able to travel the world, that we won't fall, and that we're able to move. So this is the concept of health span, and this is what we work with. And we believe that this is actually how we can change the way we see health and the way that we can get rid of most chronic diseases. So if I ask you right now, how long would you think you will live? I want you to think about an age. Most people think about the age their parents or grandparents, how long they lived, or the age at which they died, right? Because we think that longevity is dependent only on genetics. However, studies have showed that how long or how well we live depends only 25% on genetics and 75% on lifestyle. So it's only 25% what you can't change. 75% depends on you and how you live your life. Because some people think that, oh, my parents had hypertension, my parents have diabetes, I will definitely have it too. But that's not true. It really depends on how you live your life, how you develop disease and how long you'll live. So our clinic works with longevity and aging, and well, this is a very popular subject in the world and something that's being developed. And what really started this longevity field was this paper that was published in 2013 called The Hallmarks of Aging. It was so important because it was a way in which we could see how people age and a way in which we could measure aging. Whenever we have a disease, we need to have markers to show that what we're doing is actually working to cure the disease or to help it not advance. So the hallmarks of aging were a way in which we were able to measure the biological age of people, because we have two ages. We have the chronological age, which we get through birthdays, and we have our biological age, which is based on how much we have damaged our body. So probably some of you have heard about some of these hallmarks of aging, because right now there are tests which measure these in your body, and they're able to tell you your biological age. How have you damaged your body till now, and what can you do about it? So to explain some of them, we have telomere attrition, which telomeres are caps at the end of your DNA that allows the DNA to replicate. Whenever there's damage, we need the DNA to replicate so we can repair that damage. As we get older, those telomeres start shortening and shortening to the point where the cell can't replicate anymore. And that's when we start having cells that die or they are senescent. We also have senescent cells, which are cells that have suffered damage. They can't die, they can't replicate, they're only creating inflammation in our body. We also have stem cell exhaustion, that stem cells are cells that can replicate in our body to help cure damage as well. And the most interesting one, and the one that our clinic works with, is mitochondrial dysfunction. So what is the mitochondria? Probably some of you remember the mitochondria from science class, but it's called the powerhouse of the cell. And why? Because the mitochondria is in charge of creating energy for the body. And it's energy we need for every single process in our body. From absorbing nutrients to moving, we need energy for absolutely everything. And from where do we create this energy? We create it from oxygen and food. So basically, we eat and we breathe so we can bring it to the mitochondria so the mitochondria can produce energy. If we're not able to produce this energy, we die. Imagine that the poison cyanide, how it works, is by disrupting the ability of the mitochondria to produce energy. And truly, this is how we die. This is why the mitochondria is so important for the body. We also like to work with the mitochondria because the mitochondria controls our metabolism. Metabolism, at the end, is how we use food to turn it into energy. So having good mitochondrial health means we have good metabolism. And we know that most chronic diseases are based on a metabolism that doesn't work. And metabolic health is the foundation upon most diseases are built upon. If we have anything but an optimal metabolic health, we increase the risk for chronic disease. So we truly believe, or I truly believe, that the key to stopping most of civilization's chronic diseases not only relies on aging, but on the mitochondria. So what we measured in our clinic, what we started doing to measure if the mitochondria was functioning correctly or not, was a concept called metabolic flexibility. So whenever we eat something, it gets transformed into carbohydrates, fat, or protein, right? Proteins, we use them for other things, like building muscle, so we won't focus that much on protein. But the mitochondria mainly uses carbohydrate and fat to create energy. When we're fasting, if some of you haven't had breakfast, you're probably using fat. After we eat, we release a hormone called insulin, which allows us to use glucose as our main source of energy through the mitochondria. Using the right macronutrient at the right time, using fat when we're fasting and glucose after eating, is called adequate metabolic flexibility. And this is what we measured to make sure people didn't have mitochondrial damage. On the other part, we have metabolic inflexibility, which happens when there's mitochondrial damage and people, instead of burning fat when they're fasting, they only burn glucose the whole time. So let me show you this with an analogy. Imagine that the fabric is fat and carbohydrates. The sewing machines are the mitochondria, and pants are energy. So if we are exposed to unhealthy nutrition, bad sleep, toxins, sedentarism, stress, what happens is that we create free radicals in our body that ends up damaging our mitochondria. What happens next is that the food that I used to process with this mitochondria, now the remaining mitochondria have the extra work and have to process the extra food to create energy. So if I'm not changing my habits and my mitochondria is already damaged, what I'm doing is that I'm adding extra stress to the remaining mitochondria, to the point where they're not going to work anymore. And the stress is going to continue piling up until I developed disease. So let's see how this looks in the body. So in the body, this is the cell, right? And mitochondria are these bean-shaped structures. So what happens is that if we have this unhealthy habits where we're not moving, we're eating too much, we're overstressed, we're being exposed to heavy metals and toxins, our mitochondria are going to start to get damaged. And the cell is very smart. It loves the mitochondria. It doesn't want all the mitochondria to get damaged, because if all the mitochondria gets damaged, the cell will die. So it's going to protect itself by getting rid of some fabric, getting rid of glucose or fat. And what it's going to choose to keep is fat. Why? Because fat gives out much more energy than glucose. When something is kicked out of the cell, it goes into the bloodstream. So imagine that we have all that extra fabric, we're kicking glucose out of the cell, we're only staying with fat because the cell doesn't want to overstress the mitochondria. And glucose out of the cell is in the bloodstream. However, when glucose is in the bloodstream, it's incredibly toxic for every tissue in our body. If you have someone that you know that has diabetes, you'll notice that they have problems with their eyes, they have problems with their kidneys, they have problems with the nerves, because glucose is toxic to every tissue. So the body is going to tell the cell, like, I don't care if your mitochondria are overstressed, I'm going to kick glucose back into the cell. To do this, it's going to increase a hormone called insulin, which, if you remember, it's only supposed to be secreted after we eat. But in this case, when we have mitochondrial damage, it starts being released all day. And that's why we end up using glucose all day, because we have increased insulin that makes the cell use glucose all the time. This is called metabolic inflexibility, and it is the beginning of diabetes. And as we know, diabetes is now one of the causes of Alzheimer's disease, of cancer, and a risk of cardiovascular disease. So, now that I have talked a little bit about the science of it, behind it, because I think it's important to understand what happens when we have mitochondrial damage, we're going to see what we can do about it, or what we can change in our habits to improve our mitochondrial health. So when we talk about longevity, we usually work with this called the hermetic effect, which means stressing your body just enough to get a beneficial response. So if you see this graph we have here, optimal aging, on top of the dotted line, and accelerated aging. So we can see that if we don't stress our body, then we have accelerated aging. If we overstress our body, we have accelerated aging as well. But if we stress it just a little bit, that's where we can get the best out of our body and leads to optimal aging. The best example of the hormetic effect is exercise. If we see exercise acutely, it is something that increases our cortisol, destroys our muscle, increases glucose, increases blood pressure. It's in something that's terrible for the body. But if I ask someone if exercise is good for you, everyone will tell me, yes, of course, because in the long term, exercise is great for you, because it works with this hormetic effect, stressing your body enough to make it stronger. So all these that we're going to talk about today have to do with forms of hormetic stress. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is caloric restriction. There are many ways to do caloric restriction, and some years ago, people thought that intermittent fasting was the big thing in longevity. If you fasted for 16 hours and only ate for 8 hours, you would live forever. However, they found out that it's not that much about the time you spend without eating, but the fact that you're eating less calories what makes intermittent fasting so good for you. Because we're not overburdening our mitochondria. We're reducing the amount of fabric that stresses the mitochondria. For some people, intermittent fasting doesn't work because they feel that restricting for those 16 hours is too much. And they end up binge eating because they feel if they're not eating for 16, they have to compensate by eating much more than they would if they didn't do all the fasting. So it really depends. It's not about the time, it's about the calories. The other type of caloric restriction that can work is the keto diet, which I don't know if any of you have done the keto diet, but you feel nauseous all day. So you end up eating much less calories than you would if you follow a normal diet. And fat is more satiating than carbohydrate. So we end up eating less. So the keto diet is another longevity strategy that people use for caloric restriction. Also, some people choose to do 4-day fasts, 5-day fasts, but I truly believe that what's most important is what you do every day. Another method is counting calories. Counting calories to really understand how much your body needs and when you're in restriction. Right now, there are many apps. There are many ways to do it. Most people need about 1,700 to 2,000 calories per day. You can use really a website. If you know your height, your weight, your percentage body fat, and your level of activity, you can calculate this easily with any website and really start measuring what you're eating. I personally do a combination of intermittent fasting and calorie counting because it's an easy way in which I find that I can restrict my calories. And what I did was count calories for 3 months, and afterwards, when I understood my needs, I stopped counting them and just continued eating as I normally would without obsessing over what I'm eating. Also, regarding nutrition, part of longevity is also enjoying life, right? So when you think about nutrition and what diet you're going to choose, it's not about something that will make you lose weight super fast. This is much more interesting, and this is something that I want you being capable of doing till you're 110. So this is not about restricting completely so you can lose weight. This is about a way of life. So what I usually recommend to my patients, it's something called the 80-20 rule, where we do 80% of healthy, nutritious foods that have low calories, and 20% where you let yourself be a little permissive. Be happy with something that you love and like. Because if you're too restrictive, you're not going to follow the diet, unless that's what you like, but that's a different story. But these are ideas on how to do it. on how to know how to eat to live an optimal life. The other point with nutrition is protein. As we start getting older, we lose muscle and we gain fat. And muscle is incredibly important for people over the age of 65. Why? Because if we don't have muscle, we fall. And we now know that people that break their hip, 50% of people that break their hip die within 1 year. So we want to be strong, and also as we grow older, our bones are not as strong as they used to be. So we need muscle to be able to move. We start losing muscle because we stop absorbing protein the adequate way. When we're 16, if we eat a steak, we absorb 100% of the protein that's in a steak. When we're over the age of 65, we absorb only 10% of the protein in a steak. This leads to us losing muscle dramatically. Also, muscle is the main site where we can increase the number of mitochondria. So if we don't have muscle, we're not able to grow enough mitochondria or the amount of mitochondria that we really need to optimize our health. How much protein do you need? Most people need about 180 to 120 grams of protein. Imagine that a steak or a piece of fish has about 20 grams of protein. I'm not telling you to eat 6 steaks per day, that's not my recommendation, but getting protein from beans, tofu, tempeh, eating enough meat is important. If for personal reasons you want to be a vegetarian, that's fine, but plant protein has much less, it doesn't have the amino acid leucine, which is what helps your muscle grow. And also, plant protein has about 60 to 70% the protein that animal protein has. Why? Because most of it is attached to fiber. So if you're over the age of 65, or you're getting there, and you are a vegetarian, then I would recommend supplementing with protein powders, because you really need it to grow muscle. Now, going after nutrition, we're going to get into exercise. So we all know the benefits of exercise. It helps lower your blood pressure, it provides less reduction of telomeres, it is great for your cardiovascular system, but most people don't know how to exercise for longevity. So we created a 4-step program where we give certain recommendations of how to exercise to live optimally. So the recommendations we give is, first, stability exercises, which yoga is a great stability exercise, anything that challenges your balance, and I personally love yoga for this. Strength training to increase your muscle mass, because we talked about the importance of muscle. So it's not enough just eating enough protein. We need to lift weights as well, at least 2 to 3 times per week. Something called Zone 2 cardio, and I'll explain what Zone 2 is in just a second, but it is light cardio. 3 hours per week is the minimum effective dose, and I'm not talking about a 3-hour session, but it could be 45-minute sessions 3 times per week, and anaerobic cardio or high-intensity interval training. So, I'm going to explain a little bit what Zone 2 is and what high-intensity interval training is. When we're exercising, we usually go through 6 different zones of exercise. Zone 1 is very light exercise, like walking. Zone 6 is the highest intensity of exercise than you can imagine, like sprinting. Zone 2 is known to be the zone where we're stressing our mitochondria the most, the hermetic effect. So we're stressing it just enough so we send a signal to the body saying, okay, we need more mitochondria. We're needing them a lot, so we need to create more and multiply them. How do we know in which zone we are? We basically know it thanks to our heart rate. So each one of you can calculate which is your Zone 2 with a simple formula. You get 220 minus your age. That's how you get your maximum heart rate. And then you get this value. You multiply it by 0.7. You get a value. And then you get it again and multiply it by 0.9. I'll show you an example to show how it would look like if you were to calculate it on your own. For example, if you are 50 years old, what you would do is get 220 minus 50, and you get the value of 170, which is your maximum heart rate. You get 170, and you multiply it by 0.7. You get 119. That would be the lower range of your heart rate during zone 2. And then you multiply it by 170 by 0.9, and you get another value. So your zone 2 would be any kind of cardio exercise, swimming, running, cycling, rowing, where you keep your heart rate between these two numbers. Usually you have to have a tracker, but there are people that tell me, I refuse to buy a heart rate tracker, I hate them. It's fine, I just tell them, try to do long sessions of light cardio where you don't feel out of breath. And that's enough. But if you want to get specific with it, this is how you calculate your zone 2. High-intensity interval training is more intense cardio. It looks like doing maximum effort, going to zone 5, zone 6, so it would be closer to your maximum heart rate, but you're doing it so fast that most of the time you're not able to check your heart rate, so just doing maximum effort for a short period of time. I recommend 4 minutes, and then you rest for 4 minutes. And you repeat this 4 to 6 times. So, what is the importance of all of this? Well, first, we need stability so we don't fall. We need strength so we can build muscle. We need zone 2 so we can multiply the number of mitochondria that we have so we can use the food and turn it into energy and reduce our risk of disease. And we need the high-intensity interval training to increase something called the VO2 max. At our clinic, we measured a value called VO2 max, which is the maximum volume of oxygen that you can mobilize while you're exercising. It's a measure of fitness. And this study, what it found out is that if you have a low VO2 max, which is equal to sedentarism, you have 5 times greater chance of dying than if you smoke. If you don't move, it's more dangerous, 4 times more dangerous for your body than smoking. And I think we can all agree that smoking is bad for you. And it proved to be 4 times more dangerous than having diabetes, hypertension, coronary artery disease, and 3 times more dangerous than having end-stage renal disease. This talks about the importance of movement. Movement should be like washing our teeth, washing our hands, something we don't think about doing, but that we do every day. And I talked about this whole plan, but if you take one thing from this talk is, you need to start moving and exercising if you want to avoid disease. If exercise was a pill, it would be the most prescribed pill in the world. I have no doubt, because nothing has the benefit that exercise does. And I wrote down all this framework for longevity, but if you came here and you want to start making changes and you don't know where to start, please don't start doing the whole framework. Start with one exercise, something that you love, and do it for a long period of time. Do it for 6 months. And when you develop the habit, then you can start with something else. But this framework is something that I want you working slowly towards, and something that I want you doing for the rest of your life. It's not something that I want you doing 2 months just to lose weight. Something that I want you adopting as a lifestyle, and this is what we try to do at our practice. Another important aspect is sleep. Human beings are the only animals in the planet that deprive themselves of sleep for no reason. Animals in the wild usually do this when they're starving. So when we sleep less than 7 or 8 hours, our body understands that we're starving. So when we wake up, what we want to do is eat. And not only eat healthy and nutritious foods, we want to eat calorically dense, fast food that feeds us because we are starving. So that's the relationship between sleep and appetite, and why sleep has a lot to do with chronic disease as well. Also, lack of sleep activates the sympathetic nervous system. That part of our body which makes us feel anxious, or that feeling, the sympathetic nervous system is the system that activates when we feel we're being chased or in danger. If we don't sleep, we're constantly activating this system. And there was a study, the MESA study, which showed that people that got 6 hours or less of sleep compared to people that got 7 to 8 hours, they did imaging tests on their heart, and the people that slept less than 6 hours had hearts that looked 10 years older than the people that slept 7 to 8 hours. So, if we want to avoid disease, we need to sleep. Also, stress. Stress plays a significant role in our life. And it is not only about big traumas. It is how we interpret small events in our life, or even it's not when a lot of bad things happen to us, but when we lack enough good things happening to us. So how we handle those little situations that happen every day determines also how long we'll live and has a significant impact in our health. So, regarding stress, what we recommend is, I know this sounds a little new agey, but we have discovered this is science, this is important. Seeing the world with optimism, practicing mindfulness, like meditation, and usually meditation starts with the breath. How are we breathing? Are we breathing shallow or are we breathing deep? Are we in the present moment or are we in our heads all the time? Do we have social support? I think in the blue zone, where I come from in Nicoya, one of the most significant parts, or what I see in society, is that people have big families where they meet, they support each other, they talk, they laugh. And that joy in life and that purpose in life is what helps them live more than 100 years. Having quality relationships and having ways to cope with life. Because you can't get rid of stressful situations that happen in life, but you can manage the stress that happens in a healthy way. Other small actions that we have noticed that also help longevity is intermittent hyperthermia and hypothermia. So what does this mean? Saunas, cold plunges, cold showers. Saunas have been linked to an increase of these proteins called heat shock proteins that help to get rid of damaging proteins in our body. Also, sauna mimics the effects of exercise in the body. This doesn't mean that you can just go into a sauna and not exercise, but it means that it could be an added benefit to your routine if you have access to one. At least it could be 5 to 30 minutes, whatever seems manageable for you. Also, saunas have been shown, the greatest benefit from saunas has been shown on how it helps people sleep. Because when we sleep, or to sleep optimally, we need to lower down our body temperature. And what it has been seen is that when people go to saunas before they sleep, they're able to lower their temperature faster and get better deep sleep. With cold plunges or with cold showers, what we have seen is that they help increase something called the brown fat in our body. Brown fat is fat that has a lot of mitochondria. It's usually a fat that we have when we are babies and we start losing. So whenever we take a cold shower, whenever we get in cold plunges, we're stimulating this type of fat in our body to create more mitochondria. And more mitochondria means we use energy better and we create energy better. Another significant aspect that we have seen is intermittent hypoxia, which means periods where you hold your breath or you lower the percentage of oxygen that you're breathing. At the center where I work, we use a machine called the cell gym, which is a German invention actually, where we put people to just sit down and they breathe oxygen, high oxygen for 5 minutes and then low oxygen for 3 minutes. And what this did is that it helped multiply the number of mitochondria they had in their muscle, and it got rid of unhealthy mitochondria. How can we do this at home, right? Because we don't have one of those machines at home. But it could be through breathing techniques such as Buteyko breathing, Wim Hof breathing. We can practice this every day to help to stimulate our mitochondria as well. And the last point, but one of the most important ones, I think, is don't tell anyone your age. Why? Because when we tell someone our age, they put us in a bucket where they think people our age should be. For example, if you tell someone that you're 70 or 80 and you're dressing in a colorful way, they'll probably tell you you're not dressing appropriately for your age. So if you start limiting your activities to your age, and you will start limiting your mentality to your age. I don't know if here in your country people do this, but usually after 80 or 90, my grandparents close the door and they don't leave the house anymore. Because old people can't hike, old people can't travel, old people can't go to concerts. So going out of that mentality is important for longevity. And that includes having friends of different ages. Because if you have friends your age, you will go right with them to a point where you believe you aren't able to do anything that keeps you young. So not telling anyone your age is an important part of longevity as well. And here I want to show you an example. This is the brother of my grandfather. He is 96, and he does road trips all over the world alone. He just finished a road trip in Spain and Portugal, where he went driving all around Spain and Portugal. And people always ask him, like, you're 96, why do you keep doing that? And he says, if I stop traveling, I will die. And here we were going to go on a hike, and he told us, I'm coming with you. And we didn't tell him anything. We were afraid he was going to fall, but he did better than I did going up those hills. And he never uses his age as an excuse to not do things. He never uses his health as an excuse to not do things. If he doesn't want to do something, it's because he doesn't want it, but not because his head hurts, his hip hurts, because he's too old. So mentality, how we think about life, is an integral part of this process. And to finish up, I believe that the most important part of longevity is consistency. Because maybe you hear all this, you start tomorrow, you keep it up for 1 month, and then you stop. But the most important part is what you do every day for the rest of your life. Changing your mindset, changing your lifestyle. And for this, you need to start slow. You need to start with compassion and patience. Not thinking, I hate myself because I don't exercise, I hate myself because I don't eat right, but rather I'm going to make slow changes because I want to live a longer life. If you think that you don't have time for any of this, wonder why. Why aren't you a priority in your life? Why are everything else is more important than yourself? Why are you not taking time for your health and your well-being? Because in this world right now, I believe every one of us has two types of energies. We have the masculine and the feminine. And right now, the masculine, which is that part of doing, of working, of continuing, is hyperactivated. And the feminine, which tells us to rest, to take time for ourselves, to retrieve, to really work on our feelings and our body, is not being as activated. So we need to work on both and achieve a balance in our life. And the psychological is as important as the physical. Let yourself enjoy the beauty of life, and being healthy is not a punishment, but consistency is hard. And it is a decision you have to take every day to live a long and healthy life. So, I believe this is the way in which we can fight civilization's diseases. Thank you very much. I open it up for questions. right, any questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Yes.
Hello. Thank you for all this you told us. And even if we know all this, it's very difficult to explain this to our family or somebody who needs, who doesn't know all these informations, because usually people don't believe that it's so easy. Mm-hmm. So, do you have any
recommendation?
Yes, to how to help the others. If we know this, we live like this, but the others doesn't want to listen to us, doesn't believe that it's so easy.
Yes, this is a common question because most people want this for their parents because they see they don't have an optimal health and they really want to teach this. But I do believe that in order to do this, you have to want to do it. It's not easy, and people have to meet you halfway. So I believe that the best way to do it is modeling it and doing it yourself, and starting slow and little, like not telling them, okay, let's go and let's run 10 kilometers, but saying, oh, I thought of you today, let's go for a walk. And just with your actions and how you live your life, you're influencing the people around us. And at the end, well, around you. And at the end, that's what we do in life. We do what we can do best, we learn, and we inspire other people around us. And you just live your life, and when you're ready, they're ready to listen, they will listen. And if they see that you're happy, and they see that you're healthy, and that you're living your best life, people will start wondering what you're doing. So I believe that modeling what you believe in is the most important part, rather than just talking someone's ear off about what they have to do. Thank you.
Hola, Carolina.
Hola.
How did you get from medical school into this part of medicine? Because we are both doctors, and we are just now making the turn from classic hospital medicine into something like this, into lifestyle medicine. So I would be interested. Did you study in Costa Rica or elsewhere?
Yes, well, it is a whole story. But when I finished medical school, I actually was sleeping really bad, eating terrible food, drinking every day because I was a student, and I got a stroke. I was 24 years old and I got a stroke, and I developed an autoimmune disease. And I started first going to neurologists and rheumatologists, which the modern medical system is great for emergencies, and there's a space for that, and I'm really grateful for that. But I started noticing that even I took the pills and I felt worse in a different way. And the root cause was not being solved. So I started wondering what I could do on my own to actually impact my health in a more profound way. And I started reading, for example, Gabor Mate's work, or people that were interested in this, until I found a field called functional medicine. And there's an institute in the United States called the Institute of Functional Medicine, which trains physicians on the basis of how to cure disease based on the root cause rather than on the symptoms that appear. So I think that's a good first step. And there are many longevity clinics now that are dedicating to that, so I would reach out to them. I had the luck that I found Blue Spirit and people that were interested in this, but I would write to them, start thinking about functional medicine, reading about this. There are many books, Mark Hyman, Gabor Mate, and just once you're interested, I think the knowledge just flows around you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Okay, I think there are no more questions. So thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for your attention. Have a beautiful day.